14 doctors couldn't save the billionaire's baby. The infant was dying on the floor of a private clinic in Portland, lips turning blue, tiny chest barely rising. 14 board-certified specialists stood in a semicircle around the 18-month-old child, the best medical minds money could buy, and not one of them was moving. The head physician, gray-bearded, expensive suit, 30 years of prestige hanging from his voice, barked orders that contradicted themselves. Intubate. No. Wait. Check the glucose. His hands hovered over the infant but never touched. The room smelled like antiseptic and panic. CNN cameras were rolling. The mother was screaming. And 20 feet away, in a stained diner uniform, a poor single father holding his 7-year-old daughter's hand saw exactly what was killing the child. He stepped forward. His voice cut through the chaos. Quiet, certain, clinical. He told them the diagnosis in 8 words. He told them the fix in 12 more. The gray-bearded doctor turned on him like a wolf. "Who the hell are you? Security! Get this man out!" But the mother heard something in the poor man's voice, something the 14 specialists didn't have. She shoved the medical cart toward him. Her son was dying. She was out of options. "Can you save him?" The poor man's hands were shaking. 7 years of silence. 7 years of hiding. 7 years since he'd touched a patient. Then his daughter whispered 5 words that changed everything. His hands stopped shaking. What happened next? What this poor single father did in front of cameras, in front of 14 doctors who wanted him arrested, in front of a little girl who didn't know her daddy used to be a legend, was unthinkable. If you believe that true mastery has nothing to do with the titles on your wall and everything to do with what you're willing to risk when a life hangs in the balance, stay with this story. Because what happens next will restore your faith in people who choose courage over comfort. But first, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to step up when everyone else froze? Drop your story below. Now let me tell you how a busboy became the only man who could save a billionaire's son. But to understand how it came to this, how a man in a Golden Dragon polo shirt ended up holding a needle over a dying infant, while the world's best doctors watched, we need to go back 3 hours to a quiet afternoon when a father picked up his phone and saw a text that would destroy his carefully hidden life. The Golden Dragon smelled like fryer oil and burnt coffee. Marcus wiped down the last booth with a rag that had seen better days. Outside, rain streaked the windows in gray sheets. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. It was Tuesday, late afternoon. The lunch rush was over. Marcus moved between tables with the kind of quiet efficiency that made him invisible. He refilled Mrs. Kowalski's coffee without asking. She thanked him with a smile. He bussed table 6, stacked the plates on his arm, carried them back to the dish pit. The regulars barely looked up. He was part of the furniture. The nice busboy who remembered their orders. The one who never caused trouble. Mrs. Kowalski caught his arm as he passed. "How's that sweet girl of yours?" Marcus's face softened. "She's good. Reading all the time. Can't keep her out of the library." "Smart like her daddy," Mrs. Kowalski said. Marcus didn't answer that. He just smiled and moved on. At the register, Mr. Park counted receipts with stubby fingers. He glanced up as Marcus approached. "You've been here 6 years now, Marcus. Still don't understand why you do this." "Do what?" "This." "Mr." Park gestured at the empty diner. "You're too smart for bussing tables. I see how you talk to people, how you think. You could do more." Marcus pulled off his apron. "I like it here." "You like hiding here," Mr. Park said, but his voice was kind. It's okay. Everyone got their reasons. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A text from Lily's school. The nurse's name at the top. Lily's asthma acting up. Nebulizer not helping. She needs her inhaler. Can you pick up the prescription today? Marcus's jaw tightened. He checked his watch. 3:15. The clinic closed at 5. Mr. Park, I need to leave early. Mr. Park waved him off. Go. You never ask for nothing. Your girl needs you. You go. Marcus grabbed his jacket from the hook by the kitchen. It was thin. Cheap. He pulled it on anyway. The rain wasn't stopping. As he headed for the door, old Mr. Brennan looked up from his coffee. You used to work in healthcare, right? Before you came here? Marcus stopped. His hand rested on the door handle. The question hung in the air like smoke. He turned back. His smile was tight at the edges. Something like that. Mr. Brennan nodded slowly. Thought so. You got that way about you. Careful, like you're used to things mattering. Marcus didn't answer. He pushed through the door into the rain. The cold hit him first, then the sound. Water drumming on concrete, cars hissing through puddles. Portland in November. Gray sky, gray streets, everything the color of old newspaper. Marcus walked toward the bus stop with his shoulders hunched. His hands were in his pockets. His hair was already wet. He didn't mind. The rain was good. It kept people from talking to you, kept them from asking questions. He thought about Lily, 7 years old, bright eyes, curious in the way that scared him sometimes. She asked questions he didn't know how to answer. She read medical books from the library like they were fairy tales. She wanted to fix people, just like he used to. Marcus shook his head. That was a long time ago. A different life. A different version of himself that didn't exist anymore. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. He could see it through the rain. A covered bench. A faded route. Map behind scratched plastic. He had no idea that in 30 minutes, everything he'd built over the last 7 years would collapse. No idea that the quiet, invisible life he'd carved out for himself was about to shatter in front of cameras, in front of strangers, in front of his daughter. No idea that the one thing he swore he'd never do again was exactly what he was about to be forced to do. Marcus Chen walked toward the bus stop in the rain, unaware his life was about to shatter. The pediatric clinic smelled like lavender and new carpet. Marcus held the door for Lily as they stepped inside. The waiting area stretched out before them, all plush chairs and soft lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows let in the gray afternoon light. A play corner sat in one corner, bright plastic toys arranged on foam mats. This was not the kind of place Marcus usually brought Lily. Too clean, too expensive. But her regular clinic had been booked solid, and the school nurse said it couldn't wait. Lily clutched her medical encyclopedia against her chest. The book was nearly as big as she was, checked out from the library 3 weeks ago, and renewed twice. She walked beside Marcus to the reception desk, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. "Marcus Chen," he said to the receptionist. "We're here to pick up a prescription." The woman typed something into her computer. "For Lily Chen. Albuterol inhaler. It'll be about 15 minutes. Marcus nodded. He and Lily found 2 seats near the windows. A dozen other families filled the waiting room. Young mothers with infants, an elderly couple, a father holding a sleeping toddler. Everyone spoke in hushed voices. Classical music played from hidden speakers. Lily settled into her chair and opened her book. She turned to a page marked with a torn piece of notebook paper. "Daddy, listen to this one." Marcus leaned back. He was still damp from the rain. His jacket hung on the chair beside him. I'm listening. It's about when air gets trapped in your chest, Lily said. She ran her finger along the page as she read. It says the air pushes on your lungs and your heart and squishes them so they can't work right. And if nobody fixes it, the person can die. That's called a pneumothorax, Marcus said quietly. Lily looked up at him. You know about this? I used to. She studied his face for a moment. Then she went back to her book. Chapter 12 has pictures. See? The air goes here, and then the lung collapses like a balloon. Marcus looked at the diagram. His throat tightened. He'd seen this 100 times, 1,000. He looked away. Why don't the doctors just let the air out? Lily asked. They can, with a needle. It's a simple procedure. Then why would anyone die from it? Because sometimes people don't recognize it fast enough. Lily nodded seriously. She turned the page. The waiting room was warm, quiet. Marcus checked his phone. No messages. He closed his eyes for just a moment, listening to Lily read under her breath. Then a woman screamed. Marcus's eyes snapped open. The scream came from somewhere beyond the reception desk, down the hallway. High-pitched, desperate. Nurses appeared from doorways, moving fast. One of them was sprinting. The security guard by the entrance grabbed his radio and spoke into it, his voice urgent, but Marcus couldn't make out the words. Families in the waiting room looked up. Conversations stopped. A child started crying. 2 nurses burst through the double doors carrying a toddler. The child was limp, blue around the lips. His chest barely moved. Behind them came a woman in designer clothes, her face streaked with tears. Help him! Someone help my baby! The nurses laid the infant on the floor near the reception desk. One of them started chest compressions. The other was on her phone, calling for help. The blue in the child's lips was spreading. His skin had a gray cast. Marcus stood without thinking. Lily grabbed his hand. More people poured into the waiting room. Doctors, staff. They surrounded the infant in a tight circle. Marcus counted them. 14. All in expensive suits or pristine white coats. They carried leather medical bags. One had a stethoscope draped around his neck like jewelry. An older man pushed to the front. Gray beard, tailored suit, gold watch catching the light. He knelt beside the infant, and the other doctors stepped back. Someone talk to me, the man barked. What happened? He just collapsed during the checkup, one of the nurses said. He was fine, and then he wasn't breathing. The gray-bearded doctor pressed his fingers to the infant's neck, checking for a pulse. His face went pale. Get me a bag, intubation kit. No, wait. Check his blood sugar first. Someone get a glucose reading. Another doctor moved forward with a small device. On it. Actually, start compressions first, the gray-bearded doctor said. No, wait. Let me think. Marcus watched from 20 feet away. His hand tightened around Lily's. More doctors arrived. They formed a second ring around the first. Someone wheeled in a crash cart. Another brought oxygen equipment. A third was setting up a portable monitor. But nobody was doing anything. The gray-bearded doctor's hands hovered over the infant, but didn't touch. Intubate. We need to intubate. Get me a laryngoscope. Size 2 blade. No, make it 3. Actually, let's bag him first and see if we can get oxygen in. A younger doctor looked uncertain. Dr. Colfax, should we? I'm thinking, Colfax snapped. Camera lights flared. Marcus turned and saw a CNN crew near the entrance. They'd been here the whole time, he realized. The cameras were already rolling. The mother was on her knees beside her son. Do something, please. He's dying. Colfax's voice rose. I need everyone to be quiet so I can think. This is a complex situation. We need to be methodical. We need to—" He stopped, started again. "Check his airway. No, check his pulse again. Someone give me his vitals." The monitors beeped. Numbers appeared on screens. But Colfax was staring at them like they were written in a foreign language. Marcus looked at the infant. Really looked. The way the child's chest moved, the asymmetry, the slight bulge on the right side, the distended veins in the neck, the blue lips. He knew what this was. His chest went tight. His hands started to shake. Lily tugged on his sleeve. She was looking at the baby, too. Then she looked down at her book, at the diagram on the page. Chapter 12. The one about the air that gets trapped and squishes the heart. She looked up at Marcus. Her voice was very small. "Daddy, that baby looks like Chapter 12. Why aren't the doctors helping him breathe?" Marcus stepped forward. His voice cut through the chaos. Quiet, steady, absolute. "It's a tension pneumothorax, right side. He needs immediate needle decompression, or he'll arrest in less than a minute." Every head turned. The 14 specialists, the nurses, the mother on her knees. Dr. Colfax, still frozen over the dying infant, looked up. His eyes landed on Marcus. A thin man in a golden dragon polo shirt, grease stain on the shoulder, holding a 7-year-old's hand. Colfax's face twisted. "Who the hell are you?" Marcus didn't move. "It's a tension pneumothorax, right side, second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, 14-gauge angiocath. He has less than a minute." Colfax stood. His voice rose. "Security! Get this man out of here now! This is a sterile medical crisis, and you are—" "What did he say?" Vanessa Harrington's scream cut through everything. She grabbed the nearest doctor's arm. "What do you need to do?" Marcus kept his eyes on the infant. The blue lips, the chest that wasn't moving right. "Needle decompression. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, right side. Whoever does it needs a 14-gauge angiocath and needs to do it in the next 30 seconds. Colfax's face went purple. He stepped toward Marcus. "I will not take medical instruction from a busboy." He wheeled on the nearest resident. "Call the police. Charge him with interference. Reckless endangerment." But Vanessa Harrington was already moving. She lunged toward the medical cart, shoved a doctor out of the way, grabbed the cart's handle. She pushed it across the floor toward Marcus. Her voice was shredding. "Can you do it? Can you save him?" Marcus looked down at his hands. They were shaking. The tremor he'd carried for 7 years. The one that woke him at 3 in the morning. The reason he'd walked away from operating rooms and never looked back. He heard Colfax shouting, "She can't authorize a non-physician to—" He heard a younger doctor whispering, "This is insane. We need to—" He heard the mother sobbing, the infant gasping, the monitors screaming. He felt Lily's hand tighten around his, and he heard Emma's voice. The last thing she'd said before they wheeled her into the OR, before everything went wrong, before she died and left him holding their newborn daughter alone. "If anything happens, you save her. You're the only one who can." Marcus looked at Lily. She was staring up at him, waiting. His hands stopped shaking. "Yes." He moved toward the infant. Colfax stepped into his path, face inches away. "I will have you arrested." Vanessa Harrington shoved the older man aside with terrifying strength. "Let him work." 2 security guards stepped forward and she rounded on them. "If you touch him, you're fired. If my son dies because you listened to this man—" She jabbed a finger at Colfax. "I will destroy you." The guards froze. Marcus knelt beside the infant. His training took over. muscle memory older than his grief. He placed his hands on the tiny chest, palpated, found the landmark. Second rib, mid-clavicular line. His fingers moved with a speed and certainty that came from hundreds of repetitions. A nurse appeared beside him, wide-eyed. She held out a packaged angiocath, 14 gauge. She didn't ask. She just knew. Marcus tore open the package. The waiting room had gone silent except for Colfax still shouting about lawsuits and the medical board and protocols. The CNN cameras were rolling. Lily was watching. Marcus positioned the needle, just above the third rib to avoid the neurovascular bundle. One smooth motion, angled, controlled, into the pleural space. There was a hiss, pressurized air escaping, the sound sharp and unmistakable. The infant's chest wall softened, expanded, moved symmetrically for the first time. Color flooded back into the baby's lips, gray to pink in seconds. The cardiac monitor's frantic beeping steadied. The rhythm normalized. The baby gasped, coughed, and then wailed. A strong, angry, beautiful sound. The waiting room erupted. Vanessa Harrington collapsed over her son, sobbing. 2 of the 14 specialists finally moved, checking vitals, placing an oxygen mask, preparing transfer. But they were performing cleanup on a crisis that was already over. Marcus stood, stepped back. His hands were still steady. He reached for Lily. She was staring at him with eyes like saucers. Dr. Raymond Colfax stood frozen. His face was ash white. 30 years of credibility had just evaporated in front of cameras, colleagues, and the family that defined his entire professional existence. A busboy in a stained shirt had just performed a procedure he'd been too paralyzed to attempt. And the confidence in those movements made it clear this was not luck. Colfax's voice, when it came, was shaking. Not with fear, with rage. You just committed a felony, practicing medicine without a license, assault on a minor. I am calling the police, the medical board, CPS. He advanced on Marcus, his face inches away. You think you're a hero? You're a criminal. And when I'm done with you, you'll lose that little girl. He glanced at Lily, cold calculation in his eyes. Unfit father. Reckless. Delusional. She'll be in state custody by the end of the week. Marcus said nothing. He took Lily's hand, picked up her inhaler prescription from where it had fallen on the floor, started walking toward the exit. A voice stopped him. Oh my God. Marcus turned. A nurse stood near the medical cart. Mid-40s. Scrubs. She was staring at him with an expression of dawning shock. Oh my God, she whispered again. Then louder. You're Marcus Chen, the Chen protocol. We still use your suturing technique in neonatal cardiac repair. I rotated through Hopkins 10 years ago and... She looked around at the 14 specialists, at Colfax. Her voice rose. Do you people have any idea who this is? The studio apartment smelled like cheap takeout and damp carpet. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor with Lily, cardboard boxes of fried rice and orange chicken spread between them on a coffee-stained table. Rain tapped against the single window. The TV played on low volume in the corner. This wasn't their apartment. A friend from the diner had offered them the couch for a few nights. The furniture was second-hand, scratched wood, faded fabric. But it was warm and dry, and nobody was asking questions. Lily ate slowly, her eyes on the TV. The local news was showing footage from the clinic. The chaos, the cameras. Marcus kneeling beside the infant. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen in bold letters. Vigilante busboy saves billionaire's baby. Lily set down her fork. Daddy, why did that lady say you disappeared? Marcus stopped chewing. He put his container down. The TV showed him walking out of the clinic, Lily's hand in his, rain falling. "She knew me a long time ago," Marcus said quietly. "From when you worked in healthcare?" "Yes." Lily watched the screen. The footage replayed. Marcus inserting the needle. The baby crying. "You were really good at it. I could tell." Marcus didn't answer. "Were you a doctor?" He looked at his daughter. 7 years old. Her mother's eyes. Her mother's smile when she was happy. He'd spent 7 years avoiding this conversation. 7 years hiding. But she'd watched him save a life today. She deserved some version of the truth. "I was," he said. Lily's face lit up. "Really? Like the doctors in my books?" "Different kind. I worked on hearts. Babies' hearts, mostly." "That's so cool." She leaned forward. "Why did you stop?" Marcus's throat tightened. He looked away. Out the window. Rain and gray sky. He saw himself at 19. Walking into Johns Hopkins Hospital for the first time. White coat too big for his frame. A MD/PhD acceptance letter in his bag. The youngest student in the program. People stared. Some whispered. Most didn't believe he belonged. He proved them wrong in 6 months. By 21, he'd published research that made senior surgeons rethink 50 years of cardiac procedure. By 23, he was performing surgeries that attending physicians wouldn't touch. Complex repairs. Infant hearts with anatomy that shouldn't have been compatible with life. He made them work. His mentors called him once in a generation. They said he'd rewrite the textbooks. They named a surgical protocol after him. The Chen Protocol. Coronary reimplantation in hypoplastic ventricle repair. He was 23 years old. And then there was Emma. She was a pediatric nurse, 21. Bright. Kind. She'd rotate through the cardiac unit and watch him work. One day she stayed after her shift to ask him about a case. They talked for 3 hours. She made him laugh. Made him feel like a person instead of a prodigy. They were married at 24. Pregnant at 25. Marcus blinked. The memory shifted. Hospital cafeteria, plastic chairs, vending machine humming in the corner. He was sitting alone, waiting. Emma was upstairs in labor and delivery. Routine C-section. The obstetrician said everything looked good. Marcus would meet his daughter in an hour. Then the intercom crackled. Code blue. Labor and delivery. Room 12. Emma's room. Marcus ran. He took the stairs 3 at a time. Burst through the double doors. Nurses were sprinting. Someone was wheeling a crash cart. He saw the obstetrician's face through the window. Pale. Panicked. They wouldn't let him in. He stood outside the OR in his street clothes while they worked on his wife. Hemorrhaging. Complications the attending had missed. Cascade of failures that shouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have happened if someone had been paying attention. They let him in when it was over. Emma was on the table. Blood everywhere. The monitors were silent. A nurse held a newborn baby wrapped in a blanket. The baby was screaming. Healthy. Perfect. Marcus walked to Emma, took her hand. It was still warm. He held her while she cooled, while the baby cried, while the obstetrician muttered apologies Marcus didn't hear. He walked out of that hospital at midnight. Never went back. Never touched a scalpel again. Never wore scrubs. Never stood in an OR. Until today. "Daddy?" Marcus looked up. Lily was watching him. Worried. "Your mommy," Marcus said quietly. "She was sick after you were born. And the doctors, they didn't help her the way they should have." Lily's face fell. "She died because the doctors made a mistake?" "Yes." "Is that why you stopped?" Marcus nodded. "Mommy wanted me to take care of you, so I did." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Do you miss being a doctor?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't know how to answer. His phone rang. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Same number. He ignored it. The TV showed Dr. Colfax giving an interview. His face was red, angry. This man committed a serious crime today. Practicing medicine without a license is a felony. He endangered that child's life. He will face the full weight of the law. Lily looked at the screen, then at Marcus. "But you saved the baby." "I know. So why is he mad?" "Because I made him look bad." There was a knock at the door. Marcus stood. Lily watched him walk across the small apartment. He opened the door. A man in a cheap suit stood in the hallway. He held a manila envelope. "Marcus Chen?" "Yes." The man handed him the envelope. "You've been served." Marcus took it. The man turned and walked away without another word. Marcus closed the door, opened the envelope. Legal documents. Dense text. His hands didn't shake as he read. Lawsuit. Dr. Raymond Colfax, plaintiff. Marcus Chen, defendant. Practicing medicine without a license. Assault on a minor. Criminal charges. Civil suit. The numbers at the bottom were staggering, and at the end, a separate notice. Child Protective Services. Investigation pending. Allegations of reckless endangerment and delusional behavior. They were coming for Lily. Day one started with a phone call at 7 in the morning. Marcus answered on the third ring. Mr. Park's voice was tight, strained. "Marcus, I need you to come in early. We need to talk." Marcus knew before he walked through the door. He'd seen the news vans outside the diner the night before, seen his own face on the morning broadcasts while Lily ate cereal. Mr. Park was waiting by the register. The diner was empty. Too early for customers. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of coffee was too strong. "I'm sorry," Mr. Park said. He wouldn't meet Marcus's eyes. "My lawyer called. He says if I keep you on, I'm liable. If someone gets hurt, if you—" He stopped, started again. "There are lawsuits coming, big ones. I can't afford to be part of this." Marcus nodded. He'd expected this. "You're a good man, Marcus. I know that. But I got a business to protect." "I understand." Mr. Park handed him an envelope. Final paycheck. 2 weeks severance. "I wish I could do more." Marcus took the envelope, walked out. 6 years at Golden Dragon ended in 4 minutes. Day 2 brought the landlord. A thin man in his 50s with a clipboard and a nervous cough. He stood in the doorway of Marcus's apartment, wouldn't step inside. "I'm serving you notice to vacate. 30 days. Actually, given the circumstances, I'd appreciate if you could move sooner." "What circumstances?" The landlord shifted his weight. "The news coverage. Other tenants are concerned. They're calling it dangerous behavior. Assault. I can't have that kind of liability." Marcus looked past him into the hallway. 3 doors down, Mrs. Patterson was watching through her cracked door. She'd babysat Lily twice last month. Now she wouldn't make eye contact. 30 days, the landlord repeated, "or sooner if you can manage." He left the notice taped to the door. Day 3, the criminal charges arrived. A different process server, same manila envelope. Marcus opened it at the kitchen table while Lily was at school. Practicing medicine without a license. Class C felony. Up to 5 years. Assault on a minor. Possible additional penalties. And at the bottom, a separate filing. Child Protective Services investigation. Allegations of reckless endangerment. Delusional behavior. Unfit parent. Temporary custody hearing scheduled. Marcus was ordered to surrender Lily within 7 days pending the outcome. His hands didn't shake when he read it. they just went numb. Day 4, he tried to hire a lawyer. The office was on the 3rd floor of a building downtown. Carpet that smelled like old smoke. Waiting room chairs with torn vinyl. The attorney was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 30. He listened for 20 minutes, took notes. Then he named his retainer. Marcus looked at the number, looked at his bank balance on his phone. The gap between them was impossible. "I can't afford that." The lawyer nodded. Not unkind, just matter of fact. "There are public defenders for the criminal charges, but for the custody case, you'll need someone private. CPS cases move fast. You'll want representation." "How much for just the custody case?" The lawyer named a smaller number. Still impossible. Marcus stood. "Thank you for your time." Outside, the news vans were still following him. A reporter shoved a microphone in his face. "Mr. Chen, do you have any response to Dr. Colfax's statement that you're mentally unstable?" Marcus kept walking. That night, he watched the news from the borrowed apartment. Dr. Colfax sat behind a polished desk, gray beard perfectly trimmed, expensive suit catching the studio lights. He spoke with the careful authority of a man who'd given 1,000 interviews. That infant would have stabilized with proper medical intervention. What this individual did was reckless, dangerous. He has no license, no credentials, no accountability. And now we're learning about his history. A man who abandoned medicine 7 years ago after a personal tragedy, who's been living under the radar ever since. This is not heroism. This is someone with serious psychological issues putting a child's life at risk. The interviewer leaned forward. But the baby survived. The baby survived despite the intervention, not because of it. Then Gregory Harrington appeared. A separate segment, recorded earlier that day. The billionaire sat in what looked like a home office. Leather chairs, awards on the wall. His face was carefully neutral. "I'm grateful to all the medical professionals involved in my son's care, the doctors, the nurses, the entire team at the clinic. They've been exemplary." The interviewer pressed. "And Marcus Chen, the man who performed the needle decompression?" Harrington's pause was calculated. "I'm focused on my son's recovery. That's all that matters to me right now." He didn't say Marcus's name, didn't acknowledge him. The silence was louder than any accusation. Day 5. Marcus and Lily packed their belongings into garbage bags. Everything they owned fit in 12 bags. Clothes, books, Lily's medical encyclopedia, a framed photo of Emma that Marcus wrapped in a towel. A friend from the diner had offered them a couch. Different part of town, smaller apartment. But it was something. Lily sat on the floor watching Marcus pack. She hadn't said much all day, just watched. Her inhaler sat on the table beside her. "Daddy?" Marcus looked up. "Are they going to take me away?" Her voice was very small. 7 years old, too young to understand legal filings and custody hearings and the machinery of institutional power grinding toward them. Marcus knelt beside her, took her hands. "No, I won't let them." "But that paper said—" "I know what it said. But you're my daughter. I promised your mom I'd take care of you. I'm not going to break that promise. Even if the judge says—" Marcus's throat tightened. His voice cracked when he answered. "Even then." But he didn't know if that was true. Didn't know if love was enough against lawyers and courtrooms and child services investigators with clipboards. Lily hugged him. He held her and felt her breathing against his chest and wondered how many more days he had before they took her. That night, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Marcus Chen?" A woman's voice. Familiar. Yes. This is Dr. Sarah Lim. We met at the clinic. I recognized you. Marcus remembered. The nurse, mid-40s, the one who'd said his name out loud. I shouldn't be calling you, she said, but I thought you should know. The Harrington infant. His heart defect. It's deteriorating. Marcus's chest tightened. How bad? Bad. He needs surgery. Complex repair. Hypoplastic left ventricle with abnormal coronary circulation. They've consulted 14 specialists, brought in surgeons from Seattle and Stanford. Nobody will touch it. Why are you telling me this? There was a long pause. Then Dr. Lim said quietly, because you invented the only procedure that might save him. And that baby is running out of time. Dr. Sarah Lim's office smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Marcus sat across from her desk, watching her arrange imaging scans on a light board. The room was small, clinical. Charts covered the walls. Outside the window, Portland stretched gray under an overcast sky. 2 days had passed since her phone call. 2 days of Marcus trying not to think about what she'd said. Now he was here. Dr. Lim clipped the last scan into place. She turned to face him. Thank you for coming. Marcus nodded. He didn't trust his voice yet. She gestured to the light board. This is the Harrington infant, 18 months old. Hypoplastic left ventricle with abnormal coronary circulation. She pointed to the images. The coronaries are malpositioned here and here. The ventricle itself is barely functional. He's been in progressive heart failure for the last week. Marcus looked at the scans. Even from across the room he could see the problem. The anatomy was wrong in 3 different ways. Any one of them would be complicated. All 3 together was a death sentence. We've consulted everyone, Dr. Lim continued. 14 specialists, 2 surgeons from Seattle, 1 from Stanford. All of them reviewed the imaging. All of them declined. Why? Mortality risk. The anatomy is too complex. The margins are too narrow. One wrong move, and the baby dies on the table. She paused. They're afraid. Marcus understood. He'd seen surgeons freeze before. Fear of failure. Fear of lawsuits. Fear of being the one who tried and lost. Dr. Lim turned off the light board. The room dimmed. You published the Chen protocol when you were 23. Coronary reimplantation in hypoplastic ventricle repair. It's cited in 70% of pediatric cardiac literature. Surgeons still use your technique. That was 7 years ago. The technique hasn't changed. The anatomy hasn't changed. She met his eyes. You invented the only surgical protocol that might save this child. Marcus's hands started to shake. He pressed them flat against his thighs. I can't. Can't or won't? Both. Doctor. Lim sat down. Her voice softened. Marcus, I rotated through Hopkins when you were there. I watched you operate. You were 22 years old, and you had hands like... She stopped. I've never seen anything like it. Before or since. That was a different person. Was it? Marcus looked away. Out the window. A helicopter lifted off from the roof. Red Cross on white. Carrying someone to surgery. Carrying someone to the place where people were saved or lost. I haven't held a scalpel in 7 years, Marcus said quietly. My hands shake. I can't be in an OR. I can't. His voice caught. That's where Emma died. I know. Then you know why I can't do this. Dr. Lim was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was measured. Clinical. So you're going to let a baby die because you're afraid. Marcus stood. I saved that baby once. I'm not a surgeon anymore. Find someone else. There is no one else. Then the baby dies. Marcus walked to the door, stopped. His hand rested on the handle. I'm sorry. He left. The borrowed apartment was dark when Marcus returned that evening. Lily was with a neighbor. He sat on the couch in the silence and stared at nothing. A knock came just after 8. Marcus opened the door. Gregory Harrington stood in the hallway. No bodyguards, no entourage. Just a man in an expensive coat that looked wrong in the dim light. His eyes were red. Mr. Chen, Harrington's voice broke. He started again. May I come in? Marcus stepped aside. Harrington entered, looked around the small room, the second-hand furniture, the garbage bags in the corner still half-packed. He didn't sit, just stood in the middle of the room like he didn't know what to do with his hands. My son is dying, Harrington said. The doctors tell me he has maybe a week, maybe less. Marcus didn't answer. I know what Dr. Colfax did to you, the charges, the custody case. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I chose loyalty over... He stopped. I was a coward. I know that. Why are you here? To beg. Harrington's voice cracked. Not as a billionaire. Not as someone who's used to getting what he wants. As a father who's about to lose his son. The room was very quiet. I'll drop all charges, Harrington said. Criminal, civil, the custody case. I'll pay any price. Restore your medical license. Give you a position anywhere you want. I'll do anything. Just please. His voice broke completely. Please save my son. Marcus looked at the man standing in his borrowed apartment, saw the same desperation he'd seen in the clinic. A mother drowning, a father breaking. I can't, Marcus said quietly. You're the only one who can. Dr. Lim said, I haven't held a scalpel in 7 years. She said you invented the procedure. That you... My hands shake. Marcus held them up. The tremor was visible even in the dim light. I can't be in an operating room. I can't do surgery. The OR is where my wife died, and I can't... His breath caught. That's the one thing I cannot do. Harrington stared at him. So that's it? You're saying no? I'm sorry. My son will die. I know. Harrington's face hardened, then collapsed again. He nodded slowly, turned toward the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. I thought you were different, he said quietly. I thought... He shook his head. I was wrong. He left. Marcus stood in the empty apartment. The silence pressed in. He sat down on the couch, put his head in his hands. A small voice came from the next room. Daddy? Marcus looked up. Lily stood in the doorway. She'd been there the whole time, listening. She walked toward him slowly. Her feet were bare. She wore her pajamas with the stars on them. Her medical encyclopedia was tucked under one arm. Were you awake? Marcus asked. I came back early. Mrs. Patterson brought me home. She sat beside him. I heard what that man said. Marcus didn't know what to say. Lily looked up at him. Her eyes were her mother's eyes, wide, clear, 7 years old and already too wise. Daddy, she said quietly, if you could have saved Mommy, would you have? Even if you were really, really scared? Marcus arrived at Oregon Health and Science University at dawn. The sky was still dark. The hospital glowed white against the gray morning. He'd barely slept. Lily had fallen asleep beside him on the borrowed couch, her hand in his, and he'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. Dr. Sarah Lim was waiting in the pre-op area. She looked up when he walked in. Relief flooded her face. You came. I came. I wasn't sure you would. Marcus set down his bag. The pre-op area smelled like disinfectant and floor polish. Bright lights hummed overhead. Equipment carts lined the walls. Everything was white and chrome and sterile. "Neither was I," Marcus said. Dr. Lim stood. "Why did you change your mind?" Marcus thought about Lily's question, the way she'd looked at him in the dim apartment, the simple clarity of a 7-year-old who didn't understand why you wouldn't save someone if you could. "My daughter asked me something I couldn't answer," Marcus said quietly. "So I'm here. For her. For me, too, I think." Marcus paused. "Not for Harrington. Not for redemption. Because if I can save a life, I have to try. Even if it costs me everything. Doctor." Lim nodded slowly. "The team is assembling. They'll be ready in 20 minutes. "Who's on the team?" 2 assisting surgeons, 3 nurses, anesthesiologist, perfusionist. She hesitated. 3 of the original 14 specialists from the clinic asked to be present. Observing only. They want to see how it's done. Marcus's jaw tightened. The ones who stood there and did nothing? The ones who are humble enough to admit they were wrong. The surgical team filed in over the next 15 minutes. Young faces, old faces. All of them watching Marcus with a mix of curiosity and something close to reverence. Word had spread. The legend who disappeared. The prodigy who walked away. Now returning to perform the surgery he invented. One of the assisting surgeons stepped forward. Maybe 40, graying at the temples. "Dr. Chen, I studied your protocol in residency. It's an honor." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded. The scrub room was small. White tile, steel sink, the smell of surgical soap. Marcus stood at the sink and stared at the faucet. His reflection looked back from the polished metal. Older, thinner, scared. He turned on the water, started scrubbing. The routine was automatic. Hands, forearms, between fingers, under nails, 2 minutes, 3. The soap was cold. A surgical nurse handed him gloves through the doorway. Sterile, wrapped in paper. Marcus took them, tore open the package. The gloves were latex, pale blue. He'd worn thousands of them, tens of thousands, but not in 7 years. He pulled on the first glove. His hand started shaking. Just a tremor at first, then worse. The glove was only halfway on, and his whole arm was trembling. He tried to pull on the second glove. His hands wouldn't cooperate. The shaking spread to his shoulders. His breath came short. He gripped the edge of the sink. 7 years collapsed into this moment. The OR where Emma died. The blood. The monitors. The code blue. The feeling of her hand going cold in his. He couldn't do this. He couldn't breathe. The door opened behind him. Dr. Lim stepped in. She didn't say anything, just moved beside him, looked at his shaking hands. Then she placed her hand over his. Not pulling, not forcing, just steady, warm, present. "Breathe," she said quietly. Marcus closed his eyes, focused on the feeling of her hand, the weight of it, the stillness. He breathed. The shaking slowed, didn't stop, just slowed. "I can't do this," Marcus whispered. "You can." "I haven't operated in 7 years. Muscle memory doesn't forget. My hands. Your hands saved a baby's life 5 days ago. They'll save another one today." Marcus opened his eyes, looked at his hands, still trembling, but less now. "Doctor." Lim's hand stayed over his. "That baby is on the table," she said. 18 months old. He has maybe 6 hours before his heart fails completely. You're the only person in this building who can save him. Maybe the only person in the world." Marcus took another breath. Then another. The tremor faded, smoothed, stopped. Dr. Lim removed her hand. Marcus pulled on the second glove. His hands were steady now. He flexed his fingers. The gloves fit perfectly, like they'd been waiting 7 years for him to come back. He turned to Dr. Lim. "Thank you." She nodded. "The baby's ready. So is the team." Marcus walked into the operating room. The lights were blinding, surgical lights, white and focused. The room was cold, always cold. The monitors beeped a steady rhythm. The anesthesiologist sat at the head of the table. The perfusionist stood by the heart-lung machine. The surgical team waited, and on the table lay an 18-month-old infant. Chest draped, open, the tiny heart visible beneath retractors, malformed, struggling, dying. Marcus looked up at the observation gallery. Rows of faces stared down. Medical students, residents, hospital administrators, and in the front row, pressed against the glass, Lily stood holding the hand of Dr. Lim's assistant. Their eyes met. Lily raised her free hand, pressed it flat against the glass, watching, waiting, believing in him in a way he'd stopped believing in himself 7 years ago. Marcus stepped to the table. The assisting surgeons moved into position on either side. A nurse handed him the first instrument, a scalpel. The weight was familiar, perfect, like coming home to a place he'd tried to forget. He positioned the blade over the infant's chest, over the malformed heart that 14 doctors had been too afraid to touch, over the life he'd been asked to save. His hands were steady. He made the first incision. The monitors beeped. Steady. Rhythmic. Someone in the gallery whispered, "He's really doing it." Hour 1. Marcus worked in silence. The coronary reimplantation came first. The infant's arteries were malpositioned, twisted at angles that shouldn't sustain life. Marcus mapped them with his eyes, traced the pathways with instruments finer than human hair, and began the delicate work of moving them to where they belonged. His hands moved with a precision that made the assisting surgeons go still. Every motion deliberate, every cut exact. He worked in millimeters on a heart the size of a walnut. The anesthesiologist called out vitals, heart rate stable, blood pressure holding. The perfusionist monitored the bypass machine, keeping the infant's blood flowing while Marcus worked on the motionless heart. In the gallery, more people arrived. Medical students, residents, hospital administrators who'd heard the legend had returned. They pressed against the glass, watching. Lily hadn't moved. Dr. Lim brought her a sandwich. She shook her head. Her eyes never left her father. Hour 2. The first coronary was in place. Marcus sutured it with micro-stitches, each one perfect. The vessel was smaller than a pencil lid. One wrong move would sever it. The infant would bleed out in seconds. He didn't make a wrong move. The second coronary was more complicated. It wrapped around the posterior wall of the heart, buried in scar tissue from previous attempts to stabilize the defect. Marcus worked through it, peeling back layers, exposing the vessel without damaging surrounding tissue. Sweat soaked through his scrubs. His breathing was controlled but strained. A nurse dabbed his forehead with gauze. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. The room was silent except for the machines and the soft instructions Marcus gave to his team. Hour 3. The heart stopped. The monitor flatlined. Alarms screamed. Marcus didn't flinch. "Manual compression," he said quietly. He placed his fingers over the infant's heart, began massaging, gentle, rhythmic. The heart was so small it fit under 2 fingers. The gallery went silent. Someone whispered a prayer. Marcus worked. 30 seconds. 60. His hands moving in perfect rhythm, squeezing blood through the tiny chambers, keeping the brain alive while the heart remembered how to beat. At 90 seconds, the heart shuddered, contracted on its own. The monitor beeped once, twice. Steady rhythm returned. Marcus didn't pause. He went back to suturing. The second coronary was almost done. Hour 4. Ventricular reconstruction. The hypoplastic chamber was Marcus's next target. Too small, too weak. It needed to be reshaped, reinforced, rebuilt from the inside out using a technique Marcus had pioneered when he was 23 years old. The Chen Protocol. His name, his invention. The surgery that had made him a legend and then haunted him for 7 years. He worked methodically. Micro-sutures along the interior wall, building up the tissue, strengthening the muscle. Each stitch had to be perfect. Too loose, and the chamber would fail. Too tight, and it would tear. The clock on the wall showed 12:30, then 1, then 2. Marcus never left the table. A nurse brought him water. He took a sip through a straw without looking away from his work. In the gallery, the crowd had grown. 50 people. Then 70. Word had spread through the hospital. The prodigy had returned. He was performing the impossible. Hour 5. The second arrest. The heart stopped again. This time during reconstruction. The weakened muscle couldn't sustain the stress. Marcus's hands moved instantly. Manual compression again, his fingers finding the rhythm. 30 beats per minute, enough to keep the brain alive. Suture, he said. An assisting surgeon handed him the needle. Marcus worked with one hand compressing the heart, the other stitching the final seam of the reconstruction. It was impossible. No one could do both at once. Marcus did both at once. The sutures went in. Perfect. Clean. The heart shuddered under his fingers. He felt it wake. Felt the muscle remember its purpose. The monitor beeped. Once, twice. Steady rhythm. Marcus stepped back. Let the heart beat on its own. It held. Strong. Steady. The room exhaled as one. Then the bleeding started. A coronary branch Marcus hadn't seen. Buried deep. It tore under the pressure of the reconstructed chamber, and blood flooded the surgical field. Marcus identified it in 3 seconds, clamped it in 5, sutured it in 90. His hands never shook. His voice never wavered. He worked like a machine, like something beyond human, like the prodigy everyone said he'd been before grief broke him. Hour 6. The repair was complete. Marcus stepped back from the table. The assisting surgeons moved in to close the chest. Marcus stood at the edge of the OR, watching the monitors. The infant's heart beat on its own. Strong, steady, normal rhythm. The anesthesiologist nodded. Vitals stable. Blood pressure normal. He's doing great. The perfusionist began weaning the bypass machine. The heart took over completely. No support needed. It was working. The surgery Marcus had invented was working. The OR erupted in contained celebration. Quiet. Professional. But the relief was palpable. The team had just witnessed something extraordinary. Marcus pulled off his gloves. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline draining, the fear he'd held at bay for 6 hours flooding back. He looked up at the gallery. Lily was crying, smiling. Both palms pressed against the glass. Her mouth formed words he couldn't hear through the barrier, but he knew what she was saying. I love you, Daddy. Marcus's legs went weak. He nodded to the team, turned, and walked out of the OR into the hallway. The door swung shut behind him. The sounds of the celebration muffled. He pulled off his mask, his surgical cap, leaned against the wall. His legs gave out. He slid down to sit on the floor, put his head in his hands, and sobbed. Relief and exhaustion and 7 years of grief pouring out of him in the empty hallway, while behind the doors an 18-month-old baby breathed with a heart that beat because Marcus Chen had remembered who he was. 1 week after the surgery, Marcus sat in a conference room at OHSU. Polished wood table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Portland. 3 hospital administrators sat across from him. Dr. Lim sat beside him. The room smelled like coffee and furniture polish. The chief administrator spoke first, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back. "Mr. Chen, we'd like to apologize on behalf of this institution for what you've been through. The charges against you have been dropped. Your record will be expunged. We're prepared to offer you reinstatement to the medical board, a full-time position as our head of pediatric cardiac surgery, and whatever resources you need." Marcus looked out the window. Rain fell on the city. Gray sky, gray buildings. "I can't do full-time," he said quietly. The administrators looked at each other. The chief administrator leaned forward. "We're flexible on hours. Name your terms." "I'll consult, teach, advise on complex cases, but I can't be in the OR every day." Dr. Lim spoke up. "What if we structure it as a teaching position? You guide the surgeons, perform the procedures no one else can, but you're not carrying a full surgical load." Marcus nodded slowly. "That I can do." The door opened. Gregory Harrington walked in. No bodyguards, no lawyers. Just a man in an expensive suit that looked out of place in the clinical setting. He stopped when he saw Marcus. "Mr. Chen, His voice caught. "I owe you an apology. I stayed silent when I should have defended you. I chose institutional loyalty over doing what was right. My son is alive because of you, and I let them destroy your life." Marcus didn't answer. Harrington sat down at the table. "I'd like to establish a foundation in your name, and in your wife's name. The Emma Chen Foundation for Pediatric Cardiac Care. Free treatment for families who can't afford it. Whatever you need, however much it takes." "I don't want my name on it," Marcus said. "Just Emma's." "Both names," Dr. Lim said quietly. "Emma would want that." Marcus looked at her, then at Harrington. "I'll consult for the foundation, but Dr. Lim runs it. She's co-director." Harrington nodded. "Done." 2 days later, the news broke. Dr. Raymond Colfax stood alone at a podium, cameras flashing. His face was drawn. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his shoulders. "After 30 years of service, I am resigning my position effective immediately. Recent events have made it clear that I am no longer able to serve my patients with the standard of care they deserve. I apologize to the Harrington family and to Mr. Marcus Chen for my actions." His voice cracked on Marcus's name. The questions from reporters came fast. Colfax didn't answer them. He walked off the stage. 3 months later, the Emma Chen Foundation opened its doors. The building was modest, clean, bright. A small lobby with chairs and children's books, exam rooms, a surgical suite. Everything funded by Harrington's donation and designed by Dr. Lim and Marcus together. The opening ceremony was simple. No politicians, no press. Just the people who would use the building and the people who would work there. Community members, former patients, medical students, nurses. Marcus stood at a small podium. Lily beside him. He looked out at the faces watching him. "This foundation exists because of 2 people," Marcus said. His voice was quiet but steady. "My wife, Emma, who believed medicine should serve everyone, not just those who could pay. And my daughter, Lily, who reminded me that the ability to save a life creates the obligation to try." He paused. "We'll never turn anyone away. If your child needs care, we'll provide it. That's Emma's legacy. That's what she would have wanted." The room applauded. It was genuine, warm. In the front row, Gregory Harrington held his son. 18 months old now, thriving. The child looked around the room with bright eyes, his tiny hand gripping his father's shirt. Vanessa Harrington sat beside them, tears streaming down her face. After the ceremony, Harrington approached Marcus. No cameras this time, no lawyers, just two fathers. "Thank you," Harrington said simply. Marcus looked at the infant, the baby he'd saved twice. "How's he doing?" "Perfect. The cardiologist says his heart function is normal. No restrictions. He can run and play and do everything other kids do." Marcus nodded. "Good." Harrington extended his hand. Not as a billionaire. As a father who almost lost his son and didn't. Marcus shook it. That afternoon, Marcus and Lily drove to a cemetery on the west side of Portland. The rain had stopped. Weak sunlight broke through the clouds. The grass was wet and green. They walked between headstones until they found Emma's, simple granite. Her name, her dates. 22 years. Too short. Marcus hadn't been here in 7 years. Couldn't face it. Couldn't stand over the grave of the person he'd lost while he held their newborn daughter and tried to figure out how to survive. Lily knelt down, placed flowers on the headstone. Daisies, Emma's favorite. "Hi, Mommy," Lily said softly. "I brought Daddy. Finally." Marcus's throat tightened. Lily kept talking, her voice simple, direct. "Daddy saved a baby. The doctors couldn't do it, but Daddy could. He did this special surgery that's named after him. The Chen Protocol. Isn't that cool?" She touched the headstone. "I want to be a doctor like Daddy. Like you. I want to fix people." Marcus knelt beside her, put his hand on the cold stone. 7 years of words he'd never said pressed against his chest. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I saved her. I raised her. She's smart and kind and everything you would have wanted her to be." Lily leaned against him. Marcus closed his eyes. "I think I'm ready to save others again. Not full-time. I can't do that. But I can teach. I can guide. I can be there for the cases no one else can handle." His voice broke. "I think you'd be okay with that." The wind moved through the cemetery. Rustling leaves, carrying the smell of rain and grass. Lily stood. "We should go, Daddy. It's getting cold." Marcus stood too. He looked at Emma's name one more time. "I'll come back. I promise." They walked back to the car hand in hand. Lily talked about school, about a book she was reading, about wanting to visit the foundation again to see the surgical suite. Marcus listened, answered. His hands were steady now. No tremor, no shake. Behind them, Emma's headstone stood in the afternoon light. The flowers Lily placed bright against the gray stone. And as they drove away, Marcus thought about the 18-month-old baby with a repaired heart, about the foundation that would save others, about the students he would teach and the surgeons he would guide, about mastery, not the kind that comes from accolades or titles or being called once in a generation, but the kind that comes from choosing to act when a life hangs in the balance and you're the only one who can. True mastery isn't measured by the titles you hold or the fear you conquer. It's measured by the moment you choose to act when a life hangs in the balance and you are the only one who can.